Hey guys, I was doing my morning reading and I read something in First Samuel chapter 14 today, and it just made me laugh because I thought it was just a perfect example of um, what it's like to be a parent in the midst of something chaotic or a hardship. And I thought that this would be just a funny thing to share, but also something that we could apply to our lives. Um, so I'll just try to explain the story instead of reading it because it would just take too long to read it. But um, 1 Samuel 14. So the people, the Israelites, were being defeated by the Philistines, and they were supposed to be taking over that land. It had been promised to them, and they got basically tired of waiting, and so or they got tired of just constantly being in battle with them, so they wanted a king over them. And so, long story short, um, God appointed Saul to be king over the Israelite nation. And he pretty much immediately went into battle, and they were constantly fighting the Philistines. And there's this one story when he had just become king and he was doing good, but then all of a sudden there was this area where he wasn't doing good. And they were starting to be defeated, and he got really frustrated. And so he told the army that no one could eat anything until they had won, um, which was the first mistake. And of course, his own son, Jonathan, didn't hear his father say that. And so there was a big thing of honey on the ground, and nobody was eating it. But Jonathan didn't know that they weren't supposed to eat, and so he ate some of it. And it says that his strength was renewed, so he felt better, and everybody was like, oh no. And so the day goes on. They continue to fight, but the army, they were just ravished from fighting all day, that it says that they started to take the Philistines' oxen, sheep, and just eat them, just raw. They were just so hungry. They just started eating them. And then Saul realizes this is going on, builds an altar, and then tells the people to actually just come sacrifice the animals and cook them and eat them instead of eating them raw, because that was a sin back then, to eat the blood of animals. And anyway, there's more to the story, but I read that, and it just made me laugh because I thought that's totally what I do. When I'm in a situation, there's something going on in my life where I feel completely out of control or things aren't going the way that I want. Um, what do? I try to control it, and there's so many things that go on, right? There's so many. We're heading down one road and we think that this is where we're supposed to be going, and then all of a sudden something happens and the Lord's like, nope, you got to start going down this road. And what do? Is I take it and I squeeze it. I want to control it, and I want it to do what I want it to do, and my kids get stuck in that. And so when I am in that place in my head, I want my kids to be perfect, basically. I want them to sit quietly and do what I ask them to do, and and not get in the way. And but of course they're going to see something that looks good, and they're going to take the honey and they're going to eat it. And I feel like at that moment I have a choice where I can understand what they're doing, understand what I'm doing, and then allow the Lord to fight my battles for me. Or I can continue on and just wrestle in my own storm and try to control it. And then my kids, by the end of the day, you know how it is. I mean, they are disasters, right? They're crying and they're throwing fits and they're hitting their siblings, and they're so frustrated from the situation, and they're feeding off of the way that I'm feeling, and so they've completely lost their minds, and I can, at that time, I can get mad that they're misbehaving, or I can try to understand the situation. The whole time the Lord is just he's calling us to him, and he wants us to let him fight for us, and we have a choice from the beginning or all the way through. We can always just stop and give it to him, and the story ends where they instead of allowing the people to do their sacrifices on the altar, and let God take control, Saul still basically asks the people to continue to fight. And the priests are like, no, we need to stay here and we need to seek the Lord, because they're not winning and nobody understands why they're not winning. And so and Saul basically says, blames Jonathan. All of this is going on and we're not winning because Jonathan ate the honey. And I've definitely have done that in my own life. I am just so in my own head about what's going on, about the situation, and then I blame my frustration on my kids, and I want them to be punished for whatever's going on. And the people rescued Jonathan because Saul wanted to kill basically Jonathan, and the people said no, and then they go on and continue to fight, and other things happen. But Jesus wants to be the person that guides us, and it doesn't mean that there's not going to be storms that come. We're going to be put into battles, and sometimes we've been in a situation where we've been fighting and battling and for a long time, but the Lord has promised us something, and he just is always asking us to let him fight for us. It says you need to sit and only be still, and he will fight for us, and that includes our kids. And so we have a choice. We can let him fight our battles, or and sit with our kids and eat honey and get sticky and have fun instead of worrying about the mess, or we can try to continue to control it, and our kids watch us, and their response is ultimately only going to be to act out in the end, because they don't know how to handle that kind of stress in the ways that we control it. So I hope that you guys are doing good. Thanks. Bye.